plug in your own numbers and get yourself a sense right now of what estimated quarterly tax payment you might have for next year, what your remaining tax bill might be for this year, and how you're going to budget to have the cash in your pocket to fully fund your IRA and pay your tax bill and pay your first quarterly tax payment. All right. So a little bit of time right now, spend 20 minutes with an online tax calculator. And this 20 minutes is going to be the best 20 minutes of your year because it is going to help you not be scrambling and freaking out on April 15th, like many of your friends. Welcome to the Sunlight Podcast. In this show, we're talking about taxes, money, and careers for self-employed people who have a big vision for changing the world with their work. I'm your host, Hannah Cole, artist, tax pro, and the founder of Sunlight Tax. If you're a creative or soul-centered entrepreneur or wellness practitioner who wants to grow your business sustainably, manage your taxes, and build a stash of fuck you money so you can control your time and have a bigger impact with your work, you are in the right place. Hello, gorgeous. I've been sharing with you a series in this podcast of quick tips for ways to save money at the end of the year. And as we're approaching the end of the year, I have another tip that is a little bit more about a different kind of savings, but it's definitely a tip that will save your sanity, save your cash flow, save you from tax debt. So it might not be about, ways to save money, but it's definitely going to save your brain and save you having a meltdown on April 15th. So what I want to talk to you about today is something that a lot of people don't realize and can sneak up on you if you're not prepared. So if you're listening to this right now, you get to be one of those people who is prepared. So here it is. It's about the April 15th deadline because April 15th is not just the deadline for when your tax bill is due from the year before. It's actually a triple deadline. This is so, so important for you to really clock because if you don't, you're going to run out of cash. And who gets screwed when that happens is you. So here's what I want to say about that. On April 15th, your tax bill from the prior year, all the money you have not already prepaid in taxes, whether that is through W-2 withholding, if you have a day job or your spouse has a day job, or whether that prepayment of tax was through your estimated quarterly taxes. If you're listening to this, you're probably self-employed and you probably pay your taxes through estimated quarterly taxes as freelancers and self-employed people and businesses are required to do. So you've been making your quarterly payments throughout the year, and your last one is due January 15th, okay? What that means is if those payments were roughly accurate, then you should not have much of a tax bill at all. Maybe you have overpaid, in which case you're going to get a refund, right? So the whole idea is that you're actually paid up on your tax bill before you get to April 15th. But then, of course, if you haven't, that's the date when the last settle up is required, okay? Now, of course, if you're listening to this and you're freaking out and you're like, oh my God, I've never paid quarterly taxes. I usually pay a gigantic annual tax bill all at one time. I'm here to say, please go back into the archives of this podcast and check out the episodes on estimated quarterly taxes because you need those. You need those episodes to get yourself settled. And I would recommend for you that you get as caught up as you can now on making your tax payments for the year 2024, because the law actually requires that you be doing that, and you're paying a lot of penalties and interest if you don't. And you don't want that. Definitely go back and check out those episodes on estimated quarterly taxes. I will put them in the show notes so that you can access them more easily. All right, but for the rest of you, if you are on top of your quarterly taxes, then you should not have much of a tax bill April 15th. If you didn't have any big dramatic, income change or life change during the year that shifted your financial situation, and you're going to have to make that up. So I'm actually going to say probably no tax bill, but I think you know who you are if you've got a big tax bill coming, right? So there's that. That's due April 15th. We all know that. But the two things we often tend to forget, and I've seen this because I've prepared the taxes of so many creative people, caring people, people who are self-employed, a lot of us forget that April 15th is the deadline for two other things. One, it's the first deadline for your first estimated quarterly tax payment of the next year of 2025, right? So you owe your first a quarter of the taxes for all of 2025 on April 15th, as well as your tax bill for 2024. On top of that, April 15th is the deadline for you to fully fund your IRA. Okay. So if you want to take advantage of that wonderful tax sheltering account called an IRA, an individual retirement arrangement, which is you putting money into this account, and you can invest the money when it's in the account, and you need to be. You get a big tax break for doing that, which is awesome. Awesome, awesome. It helps you save for retirement, save to just have a big rainy day fund when you're always maxing out your IRA every year. This is basically my personal religion. I advocate it for all of you to make it your religion to max out your IRA every single year. Okay. If you do nothing else for your financial health, that is one thing that will put you in a good position. So, in personal finance, there's this principle called pay yourself first. And what pay yourself first says or means is that you fund those priorities like your IRA, which is, your nest egg, right? You fund that first, then you fund the bills that you have to pay. And then after that, you do the fun stuff, the optional stuff, right? But what I see too often is people pay the fun stuff, the optional stuff, and then they pay the bills. And what they don't pay for is those big priorities like the IRA. So a lot of times, what you end up doing is paying yourself last. What happens if you pay yourself last? You probably don't get paid, right? So I really want you to put the IRA funding front of your mind and make that a really solid priority for yourself every single year. This is what I want for you, to give you rest, to give you the ability to focus where you want to focus. Say yes to the dream opportunities, say no to the unhealthy situations. This is what funding your IRA is for. Okay, so to do that, you're going to need to not run out of cash on April 15th. And one of the ways that you don't run out of cash on April 15th is that you've got your tax bill due and your first estimated quarterly tax payment due, and you account for those things so that on top of that, you can also budget that $7,000 maximum contribution to your IRA. Okay, you see what I'm saying here? All right, so let's do a little bit of math. I'll keep it easy and I'll keep it quick. I plugged some numbers into an online tax calculator, and I'm going to link to that tax calculator in the show notes here so that you can play this game at home. So an online tax calculator can be such a friend to you because it really can help you see some real numbers. You can put in your actual income year to date or your projected income for the full year, and you can really kind of see where you might land. You can get a really good sense of what your tax bill might be coming up, and just knowing that in advance rather than getting a nasty surprise is so good. It's so good. So, all right. So what I want to show you is just how to do a little bit of budgeting for yourself to make sure that you don't run out of cash and you have enough money at hand to fund your IRA by April 15th. Okay? Because right now I'm speaking to you at the very tail end of December 2024, and you've got about 4 months, a little more than 4 months to set aside some money. All right? So here's how we're going to do it. I plugged into an online tax calculator. I really like the one that the AARP has because it's free and because it really gives you a lot of good detail. So I plugged in for a sample person who is making all of their income self-employed. And this is important because when you're self-employed, your taxes feel a little higher because you're paying self-employment tax, and that can feel like a lot. So a single person, so I'm putting into this tax calculator $100,000 of profit, $100,000 of taxable income. So remember, what you're taxed on is after you take out your business expenses. So a lot of us only think about the income we bring in, but we forget that bookkeeping is going to lower that taxable number very dramatically. So doing your bookkeeping is very important to actually know what your taxable income is. Okay, so $100,000 of taxable income, freelance income, and I plug that in, and this is a single taxpayer, no tax credits, no dependents, nothing else fancy happening in the system. So we're keeping this as simple as possible. So for $100,000 of self-employed income, this taxpayer roughly has, for 2024 tax year, $11,300 of income tax, $14,100 of self-employment tax. Notice that the self-employment tax is larger than the income tax. Self-employment tax, just PS, is the primary reason that self-employed people tend to underestimate how much tax they owe, right? This self-employment tax here is accounting for more than half of this taxpayer's taxes due. All right, so I'm going to round these numbers so they're nice and easy to work with. $11,000 income tax, $14,000 self-employment tax. We're calling this $25,000 in taxes. Okay. Yeah. All right. That's substantial. We're going to feel that. So in this scenario, I am going to assume that this person has been listening to my podcast and paying their quarterly taxes, and so is roughly paid up on the tax bill. So I'm not even going to account for the fact that there's a tax bill. If you are in that scary, unpleasant boat where you're not paying quarterly taxes and you think you're going to owe a full year's tax on April 15th, I highly encourage you to go in and make a tax payment today, as soon as you can. Plug your income dollar amounts into an online tax calculator, see how much you think you owe for the year, and go ahead and pay it in advance, because that money, it doesn't go into a black hole. It's a prepayment of your taxes. It comes off your tax bill as a tax credit, right? You get credit for it. And if you overpay it, you get a refund. So do it now and stop that interest from accumulating and stop those penalties from accumulating. Okay, but in my scenario, I am assuming this person has been paying quarterly taxes and so does not have an April 15th tax bill. So all I'm doing in this scenario is showing you how to budget for a first quarter estimated quarterly tax payment and fully funding their IRA. Okay. So if this year's total tax based on $100,000 of income is about $25,000, we're going to divide $25,000 by 4 to get next year's quarterly tax payment amounts. This is rough. It doesn't guarantee this person makes $100,000 next year. The income could go up, it could go down. So it's important to understand that this is a moving target and estimates are estimates, right? They can change and you can change them in real time. But for now, given what we know about the future, which is only a guess, we're going to say that a quarter of $25,000 is $6,250. That amount is going to be this person's first quarterly tax payment due April 15th. Okay. And now, because this person is going to pay themselves first, they're going to make their IRA funding a priority. They're going to put the maximum in, which for 2024 is $7,000. And yes, the cool thing about IRAs is you can fund them after the year that they are credited to up to the tax deadline. So you can put money into an IRA up to April 15th that will count for the year before, for tax year 2024. All right. So $6,250 for a quarterly tax payment, $7,000 for the IRA funding, both due April 15th, is $13,250. All right. $13,250 is how much cash this person is going to need by April 15th. All right. It's good to know that's coming because that's a fairly large chunk of cash, right? And if you wanted to budget for yourself a little more humanely, what you might want to do is say, hey, well, there's about 4 months until April 15th. So I'm going to divide $13,000 by 4, which is going to equal about $3,300 per month. Okay. So now I know that I'm going to need to set aside $3,300 per month in order to meet that full amount of cash that I'm going to need April 15th. Okay. That's the trick. That's the magic. What I'm hoping for you is that you just take a look at your numbers right now, get out this online tax calculator, click into the show notes, find that online tax calculator, and put in the amount of profit that you have for the year. Plug in your own numbers and get yourself a sense right now of what estimated quarterly tax payment you might have for next year, what your remaining tax bill might be for this year and how you're going to budget to have the cash in your pocket to fully fund your IRA and pay your tax bill and pay your first quarterly tax payment. All right. So a little bit of time right now, spend 20 minutes with an online tax calculator. And this 20 minutes is going to be the best 20 minutes of your year because it is going to help you not be scrambling and freaking out on April 15th, like many of your friends. All right. So I really, really hope that this episode is helping you get a sense of what's coming and how to plan for it so you do not feel stressed. The other thing I want to mention is that while you're sitting down with this online tax calculator, looking at your year-to-date numbers, estimating what tax you owe, you still have a little time left in December to do some tax planning and to get some savings. So go back and listen to this series that I just put out this month on year-end tax saving tips. I have one on healthcare. I have one on charitable contributions. I have one on business expenses. Go back and take a listen, because these are going to really help you get a little extra cash and a little more tax savings. All right. So when you're looking at that number of the tax you owe, realize you can go back and listen to these episodes and you can make that number just a little bit lower. All right. I really hope that helps you all have a calm, budgeted situation where you don't freak out, where you do have the cash you need, and where you make your own financial health a real priority. All right. Thanks for being with me today. See you in the next one. Bye. Thank you for listening. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review. It really helps, and share it with a friend. I'm so grateful. This podcast is for education and entertainment only. Nothing in this episode should be taken as individual tax or financial advice. You can find all the tools, books, and links we reference at sunlighttax.com/podcast.